Hello everyone, thank you so much for joining me on this very first video on the Hannah Pruitt Stories YouTube channel. I've been thinking about starting a YouTube channel for my art for a while and just finally decided to bite the bullet and do it. So I thought for this first video I would share a little bit about myself and talk a little bit about what to expect on this channel. So at least at the start, most of these videos are going to be draw with me's with time-lapse like this one today. Today we are working on my Peach Blossom Fairy that I did for Casey Robbins' March of the Fairies art challenge on Instagram last month. I went ahead and recorded this knowing that I was planning on doing a YouTube channel, so you're kind of seeing some of my past work in this one, but I hope you don't mind. So I'll probably be starting out with mostly draw with me's like this video we have today, simply because I'm not super familiar with video editing, so there's definitely going to be a learning curve for me. I figured this would be a good way to get started and then just learn as I go and hopefully continue improving. But I do hope in the future to also have some how to draw or more how I draw, just sharing my process with you guys. I might have some Q&A videos. As I get farther into this, I'd love to get some input from my viewers and just hearing what you guys would like to see. And so yeah, I think that's going to be really fun. I would also like to say that most of my video experience up to this point has been shorter videos like Instagram Reels and things, so I am not used to having to talk for 20 minutes, so I'll see how I do at filling this space. As it is, I'm having to stop and record a bunch of little clips, but thank you for just bearing with me as I figure all of this out. My goal with this is to make you feel like you're just sitting with me as I'm drawing and we're just having a friendly chat. That's the goal. Hopefully that's what I accomplish. Like I said earlier, I thought I would use this opportunity to share a little bit about myself, just kind of introduce you to my art journey, my writing journey, and just some of the things that I've been going through over the past it'll be 15 years this year, actually, since I started seriously pursuing art and writing. I'm primarily a self-taught artist. I have been drawing since I was about 3 years old, and my parents were awesome at just making sure I always had tons of art supplies on hand. Started with Crayola crayons. For a lot of years, I was using Pentel markers, and then in more recent years for my hand-drawn art, my favorite things to use are alcohol-based ink markers, such as Copics or Ohuhus. I absolutely love them because they give kind of a watercolor effect, but I am horrible with brush control, so I can get a watercolor effect while having more control with the use of a marker instead of a paintbrush. I had some minimal art training over the years. In the 3rd grade, I had a very special art teacher who came in and just taught our whole class. I believe it was about once a week, so it wasn't all that much, and it may have even been a comprehensive study for about a month. But his name was Mr. Boleski, a great guy. He has passed on now, but he very much encouraged me in my art. I think he could see that I had a gift, even at that young age, and so he was very encouraging. Even in later years, he would check in on me and was always just very proud of me and my journey, and that was a real encouragement to me. Really, other than that, I didn't have a whole lot of official training. I had some art books that my parents supplied me with that they always teased me I never really used. Sometimes I would just look at the last step of the how to draw stuff and just copy that instead of following all the steps. I was a little bit of a stubborn kid, but I always had a lot of encouragement from friends and family, and I had several teachers who were very encouraging of my artistic endeavors, but nothing really formal besides that. I didn't go to art school. I grew up in the 80s and 90s, so this was before the age of YouTube tutorials and things, so a lot of stuff I just had to figure out on my own. I do remember one specific time at my grandma's house when we were watching a behind-the-scenes feature of some sort on Walt Disney and how he drew Mickey Mouse, and there was actually a little segment where he did a sketch demonstrating how he drew Mickey, and I remember watching that and trying to copy it in real time. And then, of course, like most 90s babies, I did see some Bob Ross every once in a while. I didn't have a TV at my house, but I had one at my grandparents', so every once in a while that would come on. So really, those were kind of my first influences in my artistic endeavors. One of the other major influences on my art as a kid was Disney. Growing up in the Disney Renaissance era and watching movies like The Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, The Lion King, those were probably the four most influential for me. But also having access to older animation as well really inspired me. Even though there weren't actual art tutorials, I would draw Disney characters all the time, and I still see some influence in the Disney style in my own style to this day. So, as far as I know, that's all of my art influences. I'm sitting here thinking frantically going, did I forget anyone? But I think that's pretty much the major influences in art that I had. Again, lots of support from friends, family, and teachers. But other than that, my art was something I kind of took for granted, which I think is easy to do when there's something that comes pretty naturally to you. I enjoyed it and I was thankful for it, but I never really felt like I was anything all that spectacular. I mean, sometimes I could be a little conceited about it, I suppose, but I was also a really insecure person for a lot of years, so I never really saw it as anything spectacular. And especially where I hadn't done professional training or anything, I just thought, oh, this is just something I do. It's no big deal. So when it came time for me to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, first and foremost, I knew that I wanted to be a wife and mom. That had been the dream really from the time I was little. I just knew that's what I really wanted. So I've never been a super career-oriented person, but I also didn't want to just sit around twiddling my thumbs, waiting for a husband and kids. I was in a pretty serious relationship in high school and in college, and eventually ended up marrying my high school sweetheart. We will be married for 23 years this summer. Had to think about that for a minute. So that's been awesome. But while we were dating and when I knew we weren't ready to be married yet, I decided to get my BA in teaching because I read a lot of stories and most of them were like Anne of Green Gables or the Grandma's Attic series, and those both featured girls who decided to become teachers at least for part of their lives, and I think that kind of influenced me. Went into teaching and realized I enjoy it, but this isn't really the thing that I want to do with the rest of my life. I think part of it with the teaching is, like many areas of my life, I tended to view things with a kind of rose-colored glasses outlook. I pretty much was Anne of Green Gables. I connected with her on many levels. So getting into teaching, there were some really great things about it, but there were also some things that I didn't enjoy as much. And really, I didn't teach all that much before I started having kids of my own. And my husband and I had decided early on that we really wanted me to be able to stay home with the kids and raise them. I realized that's not always possible, especially in today's economy, but that was something that we really felt strongly about. And so when I went back to teaching, it was one day a week teaching art, and it was teaching the same ages as my kids, and it was super stressful. And I realized, I like teaching adults a lot more than I like teaching kids, even though I love kids, but I like being the fun person around kids, not the person that has to keep them in line and make sure they're, doing their assignments and everything. It just was not enjoyable. I think another big challenge during this time period was having 3 kids of my own at home and then going and adding 30 more of the same ages at school was just a little too much. I feel like I'm getting to the point now where my kids are young adults and teenagers that I probably would enjoy teaching kids a little more because I'm not dealing with that same stage at home. But all that to say, the teaching thing didn't last super long, and for a lot of the kids' really early years, I just focused on being a mom, and that was plenty to keep me occupied. But as the kids started getting a little older and were in school and things, I just kept thinking back to some of my other passions, and a big one for me was writing. I had always drawn and everything, but my art always was connected to story. Even when I was a little kid and played with toys, there was always a story. So I've really been a storyteller all of my life. In my college classes, one of the classes I had to take was children's literature. And during that time, one of our assignments was to rewrite a famous fairy tale. My all-time favorite was Beauty and the Beast, especially the Disney version. In fact, I had a collection of Beauty and the Beast memorabilia. So I went ahead and selected that story, and what started out as a simple assignment became kind of a passion project that I just kept working on. I can remember being in college and I would be in the library studying or something, and just whole parts of the story would come to me in these videos in my head basically, and I would just grab a pen and a piece of paper and I could barely keep up with my thoughts, just trying to get all these scenes written down. Also during this time, my children's lit teacher told me about a local writers group, and so I went to that for a while, and it just really sparked a passion for writing in me. So over the next several years throughout college, my early married years, I worked on this little story. Didn't work on it very much when my kids were really small because I didn't have a lot of time, but when they were just a little bit older and a little more independent, I kept working on it, and one year I finished it. I printed it out, I did illustrations, my mom helped me use a spiral binding machine to bind all of them, and I gave them to friends and family for Christmas that year, and it was so exciting to see something I had actually finished. This was probably the first story I had actually finished. I had a lot of unwritten drafts throughout the years, so it was exciting to see something with my name on it that I had finished and given to everybody. So fast forward to 2010, and I saw that the writing group that I had attended for a while was hosting a writers conference, literally 2 minutes away from my house. So I talked it over with my hubby and decided to go. At that time, I made a connection with one of the founders of the group who was offering writing coaching, and I worked with her for a bit, and I had some children's book ideas and also some more fairy tale retelling ideas. I just came up with this really fun idea. I felt like my characters from my Beauty and the Beast story had more of a story to tell, especially focusing on the after the happily ever after. And she really thought that was an incredible idea. This was incidentally right before Once Upon a Time came out, so timing could have been better. Anyway, and then there was one other person in the writers group who kind of told me, you need to focus on either writing or illustration. You can't really do both, which I have since learned is not exactly fantastic advice, but as a newbie talking to someone who had a lot more experience, I took her advice and decided, well, writing it is. Art is just something I do. I want to be a novelist. Coincidentally, the whole novelist thing probably also came from books because, Anne of Green Gables wrote, at least in the miniseries, and Jo March. I was also a big fan of Little Women, especially the Winona Ryder version. I tended to kind of be a watch the movie first and then read the book girl. So anyway, there was probably a little bit of romanticism attached to that as well. But all that to say, around this time I had started doing a doll and toy review blog for moms and collectors, basically because I had learned that as a writer, I needed to have a platform. And so I thought, hey, I'll try this blogging thing. I'd also just recently watched Julie and Julia, the story of Julia Child and Julie, I cannot remember her last name, who did the blog where she did one of Julia Child's recipes every day. And that really inspired me to try starting a blog. So I did that. I blogged there for 7 years and had a great time. But early on, probably about 5 years in, I should have looked this up. It's been a while, so I don't remember exact details, but I decided that I really wanted to go to a writers' conference to learn more about my craft. The problem was the one I wanted to go to, the Christian Writers Conference at Mount Hermon, was super expensive, and I just didn't see how I could afford to go. Around this time, I'd been really working on my Beauty and the Beast retelling that was kind of a continuation of the story I'd started in college. And one of my writing friends suggested, hey, you should do a Kickstarter. And I was able to attend that first conference. It was 2015. Haha, I do remember because it was exactly 10 years ago. So 2015, my blog readers basically paid my way. My blog readers and some of my friends paid my way through Kickstarter. So that was just an incredible blessing. I felt so loved and so cherished, and I will never forget that as long as I live. So over the past 10 years, I've been pursuing becoming a published author. I continued blogging at Never Grow Up. I was able to attend several other conferences. I continued working on my fairy tale retelling that ended up turning into a 6-book huge project with an allegorical twist and all this stuff, and it was so involved and it was way too much and just way out of my wheelhouse, and I learned a lot and had a lot of fun, but thankfully did not get signed on for that project. So things have shifted from becoming a novelist to working on a YA novel, and just in the last several years I've seen doors open for becoming a children's picture book author and illustrator, which, funny thing was, is kind of what I was thinking when I very first started out, and then I ended up on the fairy tale retelling trajectory. But throughout all of this, I've just really seen God's hand in opening doors, closing doors, connecting me with the right people. It's been so incredible just seeing all of that. I actually did illustrate a children's book for a friend in 2019, which was a wonderful learning experience. But at the end of it, I thought, I don't want to do children's books, at least not for other people, because I found it really stressful to try to bring someone else's characters and ideas to life. I also was doing it with hand-drawn art, which was so complicated and difficult. So I just thought, I just don't know. Well, a couple years later, I met an agent at another conference who suggested I turn to digital art. So I invested in a really cheap iPad. I decided to choose the program Procreate because even though on a cheap iPad I couldn't do an Apple Pencil, I could still use the Procreate program and start learning it. And I really just kind of blossomed in my art with having this digital outlet. It allowed me to be a lot more brave, a lot more creative. It definitely has been helpful with some of the art commissions I've done since then, and I've even done some other illustration projects, like I said, I never would, because there's just a freedom in the digital space of trying things and then pushing the undo button. I especially love the fact that there are layers, so now when I work with the client, I can show them the line art, and then I can show them sample colors. And if they don't care for the colors, I don't have to start all over again. I can just keep the line art and redo the colors. So it's been a huge learning curve, but I really have enjoyed branching out into digital art. And I'm so thankful to that one agent who made that suggestion. So my creative journey has definitely taken me a lot of different directions, but I don't feel that anything was wasted. I can look back and see step by step how there were things I had to learn. I had to learn to be a better storyteller, which even though I'm now focusing more on children's stories, there are still things I can apply from that. And I also needed to go through that process of saying goodbye to being a novelist and realizing the importance of children's literature as well. And, you know, there are so many things that just make sense about me being a children's author and illustrator. I love to draw. I have a massive toy collection. I love dressing in cartoon character t-shirts. There are just so many things that just make sense, but I had to get to that point. So where am I now? Well, I have 3 major book ideas that I'm currently working on. I'm pitching to agents and editors. I'm actually leaving tomorrow for another writers' conference where I get to teach a class at a conference for the first time. So see, that teaching degree came in handy, even though it didn't end up being my main focus. It actually happens to be in the very same place where I attended my first conference 10 years ago, so things have really come full circle. This year, I am focusing on beefing up my platform, hence the new YouTube channel, and seeing where this adventure takes me. I'm so thankful you guys are here to share it, and I can't wait to share more with you on what comes next in this crazy journey. So I think that's about all for this time around. Thank you so much for watching this video with me, and I will see you guys in the next one. Can't wait. See you then.